Hey y'all, it's Kim Hosey here at the Shiloh Museum. Thanks for joining us for today's Shiloh Shout Out. I'm standing in front of the tourism exhibit within the 1920s to 1950s section of the museum's exhibit hall. This exhibit, as you might have guessed, discusses early tourism in the Arkansas Ozarks. Did y'all know around the late 1800s, Northwest Arkansas became a popular destination for those seeking natural beauty, recreation, relaxation, and healing? So for example, the city of Bella Vista, meaning beautiful view, located in Benton County, Arkansas, was created as a summer resort in the 19-teens. It has since then grown into the city we know today. So for today's episode, Xyta Lucas, docent and co-president of the Bella Vista Historical Society, will be showing us around the Bella Vista Historical Museum and teaching us more about the history of Bella Vista.
Okay, well, welcome to the Bella Vista Historical Museum. My name is Xyta Lucas. I have been a docent here for about 8 years, and I'm now co-president of the Historical Society that operates the museum, along with Dale Phillips, who's my other co-president. We'd like to show you a lot about the museum today. The museum was started in 1985. The building was built and opened in 1985. One room was added on in 1995, and another room was added on in 2015. So we have 3 good-sized rooms now for exhibits, plus a really nice gift shop. So we're just going to walk around a little bit and talk about some of the exhibits that are here that I think would be of interest to you. The one that shows up the most as you enter the front door is this model of the Sunset Hotel. The Sunset Hotel was built in 1929 by the Linebarger brothers. The Linebarger brothers were the ones that started the Bella Vista Summer Resort in 1917. They built this big hotel up on the hill above what is now Highway 71, across from Lake Bella Vista. And it stood for 70 years. It was used as a hotel for many decades. For 5 years in the 1950s, it was actually the Baptist Institute of the Ozarks, a private high school / junior college. And then in 1965, John Cooper came in to create what he then called a retirement community. And he converted this old hotel into his office headquarters and named it Village Hall. So it was used as an office building until 1992, at which time it was vacated for them to move to another location, and stood vacant for 7 years, and unfortunately became an attraction for the vandals, and one of them burned it down in 1999. But we'll just take a stroll around this room. We call this the Linebarger Room because it features exhibits from that early time frame until actually 1965, when Cooper started the resort. Coming down this way, we do have some exhibits about the Indian ancestry, or history, in Bella Vista, with quite a few displays of arrowheads. We have several glass cabinets with exhibits about different subjects, but one of the things I wanted to point out is that the lake was actually started in 1915, and the people that created the lake by damming up Little Sugar Creek then sold the property to the Linebargers in 1917 for them then to start the summer resort. A lot of the cottage owners in the Linebarger years put their name on the front of the cottage. And we have the original sales cards from the Linebarger years on a lot of those cottages. Like I said, they built several hundred of them. I volunteered a couple of years ago, took all those sales cards and put them on an Excel spreadsheet, sorted by name, by block number, lot number, etc. And so now we'll have people come in occasionally and say, my grandparents or my great-grandparents' name was such and such, and we'd like to know, if you have any idea where their cottage was. So we look at that list, and if we find the name, then we give them that information. And then we come back here, because this is the 1928 map of the Linebarger Summer Resort with block numbers and the lot numbers on here, which are on the sales cards. So we can zero right in. And some of the owners' names are actually written on here. Over the decades, the owners changed, they turned over. But sometimes we've been able to say to a visitor, your name was what? Your grandparents' name was what? Oh yeah, there it is right there. And so that's really fun for visitors to come in and be able to determine exactly where their ancestors' cottage stood. So as we walk around, we just have a number of exhibits about those first few decades of the Bella Vista history. In this little area here, we have Wonderland Cave exhibit. Wonderland Cave is a big cave in Bella Vista, and in 1930, the Linebarger brothers opened it as an underground nightclub. So there's quite a bit of information here about Wonderland Cave, which is very interesting. It has been closed since 1995, and it was just purchased by a new owner last year. So we're waiting to hear if they have any plans for the development of that. So moving on this direction, we've focused some on the farmers of the area. They were a big part of the history of this area that is now the city of Bella Vista. But back then, it was all just farms north of Lake Bella Vista up to the Missouri line. So the farming community was a very important part of this region. And after the summer resort opened, then the farmers were able to provide produce and dairy products and so on to the summer visitors. This particular structure here is a replica of the old dance pavilion that stood on the northeast corner of Lake Bella Vista for a lot of years. This model and the one of the Sunset Hotel was built for us by Gene Heason, who is a volunteer that has done an excellent job for us with several exhibits. This building was built in 1931, replacing a prior building at that location that had burned down accidentally. And it went through a number of uses over the years. It ended up in the 1990s as a arts and crafts store, and actually burned down in an electrical fire in 1998. So let's move through our gift shop into our other exhibit room that represents that same time frame. Our gift shop does have a number of souvenir items that we sell, souvenirs of Bella Vista, and it also has items that people have donated to us, mainly glassware type products, as a fundraiser for the museum. So we sell a variety of stuff in our gift shop. The room that we're entering now, we call the Harder Room. It's named after Carol Linebarger Harder. Carol was a granddaughter of one of the Linebarger brothers who started the original resort, and she had a great deal to do with the success of this museum in the 90s, from the 90s through today. She was the one that was responsible for us getting the funding to add this room on in 2015. So we named the room after her. One of the resort owners was E.L. Keith. He actually owned the resort for 11 years in the 50s. He bought it from the Linebarger brothers in 1952 and sold it to John Cooper in 1963. So even though he didn't own it for very many years, he did a lot of improvements to the resort during that time. So he's still a key part of our history. Another key part of Bella Vista history is a woman named Lillian Green. Lillian Green actually was the the secretary for C.A. Linebarger, starting in the late 20s. But she became a self-taught professional photographer and was very successful. Before we leave the Harder Room, I'd like to point out this display. The Linebargers built several hundred cottages as part of the summer resort, and people would come and spend the summer, at least the women and children would. The husbands would come back and forth depending on what kind of job situation they were in and how much flexibility they had. But one of the families that did that was the Paisley family. And over the years, their cottage just eventually kind of deteriorated and had to be torn down last year. So before it was torn down, they agreed to let us have the display that was the top of the front of the porch of their cottage. So we were able to salvage that and bring it over here. Most of the cottage owners in those decades of the Linebarger years put their names on the front of their cottages. So now we could go ahead and move into the Cooper Room. This room has exhibits focused on the years starting in 1965 when Cooper opened what he called the Bella Vista Village as a retirement area. And so we've focused in this area just on exhibits in that time frame from 1965 to present. He built a number of golf courses and a number of lakes. So we've got some photos from lake construction and golf course construction in this room. We've got some photos about when he converted the old Sunset Hotel into his office building that he called Village Hall. Back in this cabinet at the south end of the room, we have a display on E. Fay Jones. Jones was the architect. He was actually a student of Frank Lloyd Wright, and he was the architect that designed several buildings in Bella Vista, including the Cooper Chapel and our Big Country Club building. And he also designed a private home for John Drum. So those buildings are featured in that exhibit. In this corner, we have an exhibit that one of our Quester chapter members put together several years ago on the whole development of, or the whole evolution, I should say, of the unincorporated village becoming a city. We incorporated January 1st, 2007. So before that, we were an unincorporated village. And the whole attempt to incorporate Bella Vista stretched on for a good 20 years or more, with a lot of pros and cons against it. Next door to the museum, we have an old log cabin that we moved here 2 years ago. And that is a log cabin that was built in 1912 out in the Highlands area of Bella Vista. And a guy named Paul Parrish, who was a wood sculptor, decided he would like that log cabin in his backyard to use as an art studio. And this was at the point when John Cooper was getting ready to develop the Highlands, so he was going to tear down the cabin and get rid of it. So Paul Parrish asked him if he could have the cabin. So they dismantled it and marked the logs and rebuilt it in his backyard. And this is the kind of thing on the wall here that he had displayed in his art studio. These are some of his sculptures that he had done over the years. This one is dated 1978. But anyway, he passed away in 1997, and his daughter sold his house and the cabin to a man named Scott Butler. And 2 years ago, Scott Butler contacted us and said, "We've got this old log cabin in our backyard that we'd like to get rid of. Would you like it at the museum?" And so it took a lot of scrambling to figure out how we were going to make that happen. But we actually found a house mover who could move it without dismantling it. So we got it moved here last year, and it was all due to Paul Parrish that we were able to have that cabin salvaged in the first place. I would like to just say a little bit about these cabinets. There's a variety of exhibits displayed in them, but I just want to talk about the cabinets themselves for a moment. A number of years ago, the Walmart 5 and 10 Museum on the square in Bentonville remodeled, and they didn't need these cabinets any longer, so they put them in storage and pretty much put out the word that any nonprofit could have them, first come, first serve. So our president at the time, Carol Linebarger, heard about them, and we arranged to be the ones to get them. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them, and we have worked for a number of years now with the work detail team out of Benton County Jail. So we were able to get those guys to come haul them for us and set them up and all of that. So, that added so much to our museum because, we're voluntarily staffed. We depend on donations plus some financial assistance from the city of Bella Vista. But these cabinets made all the difference in our ability to have nice exhibits. And the ironic thing is that after we got this all set up, Carol came back to our board and said, there's 6 more of those cabinets down there. And we said, so? And she said, well, all we have to do is add on another room and we could fill up that room with the other 6 cabinets. She pulled it off and we did it. So the other 6 cabinets, a total of 13, are in the harder room. So we were quite excited about that contribution to our museum.